Good afternoon, everybody. I was just listening to a little talk by my dear friend Rabbi Meza. Video he came out with. It was called something along the lines of "Don't confuse Gentiles," or not confusing Gentiles, something like that. And he focused on a few issues. One is the idea of the Noahide movement, or the Neo-Ger movement, that's not a full Ger Tzedek, that someone could be a Ger Toshav, Bisman said, that's some kind of an ideal. Particularly David Katz pushing this really silly ideology that's somewhat cultish. And I know a lot of people accuse Rabbi Meza of something cultish when he's quite the opposite. The worst slander I heard against Rabbi Meza is that he's doing this for money, and he despises taking any money for anything religious. He was upset at me when he asked me to come to be on the Bezdin once. And I said, I'm going out of my way. It probably is going to cost, mileage. We're talking about, I don't know how many people it was, maybe 10 people. Best. And I was like, can I have $50? Can I have $5 for each person? And he said, what are you asking for money for? I paid myself to come up from Florida for this, and you're asking for money. I said, yeah, but you asked me to come. I didn't ask to come here. You didn't want me on the Bezdin. I'm going out of my way a little bit. It's 50 miles something. I'm taking several hours out of my day. It's schar b'tova. It's al pi halacha. I'm allowed to ask for it. I would have been working. And I would have been making $35 an hour, and here I'm spending 3 hours. It's much less than this schar b'tova. I was coming from work, and I think I was actually between two different things, whatever. But still, it was still out of my way. So I wasn't even asking the full schar b'tova. I was asking just for expenses, because you can ask for schar b'tova and expenses. And I have. So that's, anyway, so he's talking there about, a lot of inyanim about Kabbalah, and how he says he's not against people learning Kabbalah, but he says, please don't call this Judaism. And the thing is, there was certainly a wide variety of how we define things as Judaism. There's different things like this. So how do, these are the questions, but the points that he brought out were very important. One was that, we don't have exactly, when it comes to mystical issues, a clear psak. We do what we do, for example, so we have a psak in halacha in Jewish law, how to live, meaning how do we keep Yom Kippur, how do we keep Passover, how do we keep Purim, how do we put on tefillin, what are tefillin, what are tzitzis. The thing is, a lot of people think, they don't understand. There are many varieties of tzitzis, of tefillin, and so forth. There's not one right way, but the thing is, there are probably many wrong ways. But there are several right ways. But as long as you're doing one of them, you're okay. What is the actual requirement, and so forth. Meaning, it's clear that the requirement that the tefillin have to be black, they have to be square, and so forth. They can't be round. They can't, There's reasons why tefillin are how they are. We write the tefillin on cloth instead of on paper, specifically, mostly because it's durable. That's the main thing. Durability. Different issues, and there are things that make tefillin definitely possible and so forth, and make them invalid and so forth. And these are all issues of Jewish law. Now, we want to interpret these things in a mystical way. It's nothing wrong with it, but you don't make it an ikra emunah. We don't make it a dogma. It's something nice. It's something, pleasant. And I think that's really the main way people should view Kabbalah. And there are different types of Kabbalah and so forth, of course. And I think, there are definitely mitzvos in the Torah. There's mitzvos of Ahavas Hashem and Yiras Hashem, L'davek bo. These are commanded to us in the Torah: love God, fear God, attach to God. And the ways that we can attach to God is through finding and love God and be aware of God, is by finding inspiration in poetic forms and so forth. And we spoke about the old Ashkenazic custom of reciting Yotzros, really piyutim, and the Sephardim have their own piyutim and so forth. No one should imagine that there's some kind of an obligation on every Jew to recite a particular piyut, to recite a particular zemer, and so forth. No, these things are not obligatory. However, if someone accustoms themselves to do these things, these are good customs. These are ways to attain Yiras Shamayim, to attain fear of heaven, to attain awareness of God, to express love of God, to attain devekas, to attachment to God, through song, through poetry, and so forth. I think about my holy ancestor, the Chavos Yair. And this was a rabbi in Germany, 1600s, and we think about the German Jews, we think about, very cold, very rational, which is beautiful and fine, and, the teachings of Rav Hirsch and so forth are very holy and wonderful teachings and important. But people think that's all there is. And yet here you see in Germany 500 years ago, 400 years ago, it was quite different. It was very mystical. There were all kinds of beliefs that some people would believe in as superstitious. But yet you look at, for example, in the end of Chavos Yair, he prints songs and poems and prayers, either that he wrote or his father wrote or his grandfather wrote, mostly his father. you see, first of all, they're intensely Kabbalistic. They're intensely scholarly, meaning they reflect Torah scholarship, and they are, intensely emotional. And these were the compositions that he wrote. The same thing, you study the piyutim, the classical Ashkenazic piyutim, which are very ancient, many of them. Some of them, you say, go back to the Tanoim. And again, these poetry are filled with halachic knowledge, midrashic knowledge, interpretations, and so forth, that lead us to be excited, to be aware of God, to have emotions in our relationship with God. And there's nothing wrong with that. Now again, you're going to say, is it an obligation? No, it's not an actual obligation, but it's a very pious practice. It's a proper practice. And again, then you get to a point where it becomes like, if you're a chassid, if this Rebbe, you have to do exactly what he did. And so in Chabad they didn't say Yotzrus, which I think is a mistake. I think what they meant was that they didn't say them in the davening, but they would say them later. But it became this thing. They don't say Smiras, they don't say Yotzrus, they don't say anything. They don't say L'Shem Yichud. And it's interesting that's so the same thing. A lot of the Polish Hasidim, the Gera Hasidim, and so forth, they don't say the Yotzrus, and it's like it's a whole thing. Like Ad Kedei Kach, so like you go to a shul where they do say Yotzrus, and the people, they sit and talk because I'm a Gera Chassid, I don't say Yotzrus. It's Narishkeit. So and then also the ignorance. For the most part, the Hungarians and the Galicianers, they like to say the Yotzrus, like the Chavas Yoris Psak, that the Yotzrus that are said in the Chazaras Hashatz, those are the Yotzrus that should be said, which are not actually Yotzrus, they're Piyutim, whatever. Technically, the term Yotzrus is a reference to those that are said during the Birkas Kriya Shema, and with those, it's more of a question. Is this is this an issue halachically because it's interruption? And like the Chavas Yor says in his tshuva, is that essentially the ones in the Chazaras Hashatz, it's okay to say because the Chazaras Hashatz is already not you've already fulfilled your obligation, meaning someone who didn't daven Shemoneh Esrei yet, you shouldn't say Yotzrus in the Shtilah Shemoneh Esrei. You're davening by yourself. I mean, myself, if I'm sometimes I don't get to daven with a minyan, I'm somewhere else, whatever it is, and it's Yotzrus, so I say it after the davening, And the thing is, like, people said with the Vilner Gaon, he said not to say Yotzrus again. He said even by the Chazaras Hashatz, because he felt it's a certain level of chiyuv. By the Vilner Gaon, he didn't say in the Chazaras Hashatz the Yotzrus, but he said it is Zmiris during the davening. During the Suda, which again is a minig by the Chassidish tzaddikim, that the Yotzrus that you didn't say by the davening, you said at least some of them as part of the Zmiris by the Suda, the hymns to sing during the feast. And how to find this balance here. I mean, that's the thing. Like a lot of the things that we say, after the Haggadah, those are from the Yotzrus, from Shabbos Agogol, most of them. And like they say, well, in Chabad they don't say Chasal Seder Pesach because they're not ending with, it's not over yet. And no, that's not why they don't say. They don't say because they don't say Yotzros, and it's from the Yotzros. And they make this whole Torah about we Mezok nicht kein Yotzros, Mezok nicht kein Chasal Seder Pesach, weil was ist Zach bei uns, als Mezok nicht, als Pesach endet nicht bei uns. Like they make this whole thing, whereas no, it's because they don't say the Yotzros. That's why they don't say Chasal Seder Pesach. It's part of the Yotzros from his Shabbos Agadol, and just the ignorance that exists around us. People they just dumb. They don't know what they're talking about. So and they think that they're so smart, they can think of some kind of big Torah about why they do this and why they don't do that, and it's just silly. It's just it's a good joke, and there's nothing wrong with a good joke, but don't fool yourself into thinking. And yes, you can be inspired by that, but don't fool yourself into thinking that it's more than it is, And yes, it's still very holy and good, and it's a way to have a connection to Kadosh Baruch Hu and so forth. But don't turn it into something it's not. That's the same thing. I wear a Chassidish levush, but I know it's a uniform. It's not the people, and yeah, you want to make a joke about, and I don't mean a joke in a mocking sense. I mean in a holy sense. There's a holy thing of a joke. But we took my red from the Shemona Beguda, the 7 vestments of the high priest. And how and the thing is, yes, I mean, we were talking about these things also with the kugel and the spheres and all these inyanim, and again, these are nice things, nice meditations and so forth. They're beautiful, but don't turn it into a halacha. Don't turn it into a halacha Moshe Messinai of how tefillin have to be. There's a nafkamina between. All right, so the Kazhin Magid said the Shtreimel b'mkoim tefillin is Oisya Shabbos. So we wear Shtreimel instead of tefillin on Shabbos. So what about the Bachrim? Bachrim also have to wear tefillin. Obviously, it's a little bit of a joke. It's a joke in a holy sense, but don't take it so seriously, I mean, the thing is, yes, I remember seeing by Nicholasberger Rebbe from Muncie. We were in Prague together. We were both in Prague, and he said his Shtreimel was sent to Vienna or something, and by the Suda on Shabbos, he said, could I borrow your Shtreimel for a few minutes? I don't want to go all Shabbos without a Shtreimel. So Nicholasberger Rebbe wore my Shtreimel for a few minutes. He said to me, he's like, oh, Virginia Rebbe. I said, how do you know who I am? He said, well, how do you know who I am? He said, you're the only Rebbe in Virginia. And again, it's someone was kind of harassing me a little bit on Twitter. Like, what's this? Your Avad Kablenz, and you're on the internet. The Allah Rabbonim ga'ased the internet for days. And he was Guy Nishnibezugen was the dart of Zan Twitter. And he said there must be some explanation for this. And What's up, Shane? It's not such a serious thing. Avad kabbalah. I'm making a joke a little bit. A serious joke. I mean, I want to show my pride and covet to an ancestor I had, who was a holy person, and he was Rav in Koblenz, the Chavas Yor. And also, like I always say, is the joke is that, all the, there's already a Chenger Rebbe, there's already 3 Kruler Rebbes, maybe 4, and there's either Kruler Rebbe or Kruler Roof or this or that, and so I had, and the thing is, Koblenz sounds like a nice name. It sounds like Koretz or Koznitz or something. All it ends with a tzadi, and it's like it's a very nice name, even though it's from Germany, because I was thinking, Altov and Altov and Oyben Yushin, it doesn't have the ring to it that Koblenz has, So, but again, don't take this so seriously. I mean, and you don't need to, don't just be normal. Like, all right, so I make a shtickler joke. The same thing, Nickelsberger Rebbe has a son, who's a Badchen, he's Pester Rebbe, and he's a Molgevein Pester Ruv, he's a Shoin Pester Rebbe. There's the other Badchen, Yankel Miller, Sichun Yarmer Ruv, and so it's and so this guy, he's asking me, how are you on the internet? What does it mean, Avad Koblenz? Because in the prison, each religious group, they gave a name to their group. So the Catholic Church is Saint Faustina's, and the Indian Native Americans, they are the Scout, the Sacred Circle of United Tribes, and this one, that. So I said, the Jewish community, where Chavas Yor the Koblenz. So now I'm Koblenz Roof. It's a joke. I mean, the nafkamina is, like, at least those other groups, they have a minion. We don't. Hashem, the Yidden, man hat nicht kein minion, man hat nicht. I mean, if everyone would show up, maybe we'd have a minion. I don't know, but like, so. But that's my kahila in the prison. Friday morning at 10 o'clock, 2 people show up. And that's the Koblenz of Besmedrash. That's moist as Chavas Yor the Koblenz. It's great. What's up? I'm making it. But. I mean, Taka was a Rav in Virginia, all right, Besmedrash then, back in the old days, is what it is. So anyway, that's the way we should approach these Kabbalistic things, meaning we should understand the difference between things that are obligatory and things that are customary. In a way, the Muslim community, they often talk about, like, certain things are religious and certain things are cultural. And in a certain sense, the difference is what I would say, especially, the Hasidic Olam, the Hasidic approach to what we call cultural is intensely religious, but it's not religious in an obligatory sense. It's religious in a expressive sense. It's a religious expression. The same thing, like I chalish to go to the mikveh, and I don't always have opportunity. Now, and I'm looking, is the lake going to be defrosted enough by Shabbos? Maybe I can table zich Shabbos free, and I chalish for that, and also, I go out of my way to go to mikveh Friday, especially this time of year, I have to go, once the summer comes, I have mikveh right here, it's a lot easier, so, you know, who trying to feel epis Yiddish, you know, and you know, especially like you live in you work and live in a Gentile environment. You have to remind yourself you're a Jew once in a while, you know. And so here, you know, Baruch Hashem, I go with the Chassidish Levush, and you know, I see it, like I said, like a uniform. You know, like the same thing. You know, my co-workers who I supervise, they're priests and deacons and pastors and imams, and you know, and each one has their approach to their levush. You know, like it's interesting. You know, like the deacon. You know, he said to me, you know, he usually doesn't wear a collar all the time, but the bishop told him, "You're a chaplain. You're representing the church. You should wear a collar every day." You know, and generally, you know, a deacon, he puts on a collar for if he's doing a funeral. You know, and then you know, the other, we have an Orthodox priest, so he wears his collar all the time, but he doesn't wear a cassock and a scoofy and all these things all the time. But when the bishop is there, if he, you know, if he's, it was a funny thing. You know, we went to, for his bishop, you know, we went to visit the seminary where he's a professor, and everybody there, they're wearing their cassocks, and he had someone bring him the cassock just while he's in the presence of the bishop, and then as soon as he knew he's not seeing the bishop anymore, the cassock came off. He said, "Put it back in my car." You know, the imam, you know, he has a kufi and a robe that he wears during Juma, and if he's praying a stam a vachadika mincha, you know, or marib is actually, you know, there's no kufi even, you know, there's no robe. He takes out the carpet, and sometimes he puts on, sometimes he doesn't, depends, you know, sometimes just puts on the kufi, and it's not like, it's not married to these things, you know, and you know, so how to find these balances, you know, it's all quite interesting. Excuse me, big brunch today. Shelley's the all-you-can-eat buffet. Seems like a lot of money just to eat carbs, but so I made sure to eat a lot. If I'm already spending, you know, $20 to eat pancakes and waffles, I'm going to eat a lot of pancakes and waffles. So that's the story. So you know, so then who else? You know, the chief, he wears his things, you know, his hat with a feather in it, not a headdress, like a cowboy hat with a feather in it, you know, and he has his necklaces and things with the Mising, the Bigfoot guy on it, and things like that. But and then we have you know, our Buddhist fellow, he's you know, he just wears a t-shirt and jeans when he comes here, but he's telling me about, you know, he's in the process of being ordained as a minister, and he has to make his own robe, and he has to make it by hand, and that's part of, you know, so it's interesting how, you know, these different things exist in different faith traditions, and you know, I was talking about, you know, I kept thinking about, you know, at work, usually, except Friday is casual Friday, at work I wear a tie 4 days a week, right? And, you know, people see me in the videos with the tie on them, but by, you know, the Hungarians, they very rarely wear ties, except some of the old-fashioned, you know, and in the old days, they wore ties, you know, like, you see all the pictures of all the all the rabbis, when they were bachrim, they wore ties. Not necessarily every day, but when they're getting the picture taken, it's not, it was a big deal getting a picture taken back then, so it's wearing a tie, and and I kept saying, halfway joking, maybe halfway serious, that I, instead of wearing a tie, maybe I get a collar, because where does the collar come from? People think it's like a Catholic thing. It's not a Catholic thing. It's a British custom for all clergy to wear collars. Meaning, if you look at pictures of modern Orthodox rabbis in England 70 years ago, they would wear collars. Meaning like the Cincino Chumash, people know Rabbi Abraham Cohen, and he wrote in the Cincino Gemaras and some of the introductions and some of the translations, and he wrote the commentary in the Chumash and so forth. And the pictures of him 70, 80 years ago, you didn't see any zecher of a kappel. You see a guy, clean shaven, bald head, and a big collar, like they call a vicar's collar. So I keep thinking, maybe I should get I remember that was the Chumash my Zayda had, was Abraham Cohen's Chumash, and then the pictures, they had preaching bands, the Rabbanim in England. It became like in America, people associate with the Catholic Church, but also those in the Anglican Communion, also, the Episcopal and so forth, also wear them. But and like I said, a lot of the Orthodox wear also. But again, it's not. It doesn't mean anything. It's just something people wear. It's the same thing. The yarmulke. You're a malka. We remember there's God above us. And it's a very nice, pious thing to cover your head, and it's a minig chachamim and so forth. But it's not, it's holy because we imbue it with holiness, not because it's the actual. It's not kedusha like tefillin, like a sefer Torah. And even what does it mean, kedusha of a tefillin, a sefer Torah? It's a halachic kedusha, meaning you have to treat it with respect. You don't bring it into the bathroom. Iyama ketzitzis, you bring in the bathroom, and tefillin. And tzitzis is a mitzvah, but it's not a chiyuv to put on tzitzis. Only if you have the four-cornered garment, you have to wear tzitzis, or else it's a bittul asay. People should be educated what these things are, because we have all these beautiful, nice ideas of what the different, the knots and this and that mean, and they're nice and they're cute but it's not like it's not obligatory, because for a simple reason. The Sephardim have a different way of doing it than Ashkenazim. So, Elu ve'elu divrei l'kim chayim. Thank you for watching. God bless. Please like, share, and subscribe. Comment. We'll see you later.